They say a K-9 officer knows no fear, but no one could have foreseen what Ranger would do in his final moments. The legendary K-9 lay frail, and still his body trembling each breath, a desperate, silent battle. The vet spoke the words that shattered their world. "It's time. There's nothing more we can do." Tears fell as the doctor moved closer, the final dose in hand. Everyone believed this was the end. But then the little girl he'd once saved burst into the room, her voice a piercing scream. Wait. The world stood still. And in that silence, the impossible happened. Slowly the noble dog lifted his paw, wrapping it around her in one last embrace. Every heart shattered. Even the most hardened officers had to look away, unable to bear witness. Just then the vet leaned in, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. Something was terribly wrong. His eyes shot wide, his voice cracked with urgency. "Wait, stop everything. This dog, he's trying to tell us something." And what he discovered next sent a shockwave through the room. "You have to stay with us because this story will leave you breathless. Before we begin, please remember to like and subscribe. And honestly, I'm so curious, where in the world are you watching from? Let me know your country in the comments. I love seeing just how far these stories reach." That morning had dawned just like any other at the Brookside Police Department. Quiet radios, half-empty coffee mugs, officers thumbing through reports from the night shift. Everything was routine until the precinct doors flew open and Officer Jacobs staggered inside, desperate for air, his face a deathly white. "Rangers down." The room went silent. Every head snapped up. Conversations vanished into thin air. Even the low hum of the computers seemed to die. Ranger, the department's most beloved K-9, wasn't just a dog. He was a living legend, a partner, a guardian who had saved more lives than anyone could ever count. Hearing those two words felt like a blow straight to the heart. Captain Harris shot to his feet, his chair crashing against the floor. "What happened?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Jacob swallowed hard. "We were tracking a suspect in the woods. He just collapsed. No warning, no sound, he just went down. He's barely breathing. They're racing him to Oakage Veterinary Hospital as we speak." A crushing silence fell over the room, the kind that feels heavy in your chest. Officers exchanged glances of pure disbelief, fear and of grief. Ranger, the strongest, bravest, most unbreakable partner they had ever known. How could he just fall like that? Officer Miller's fist hit the desk. No, that can't be right. But in their hearts, they all knew Jacobs wouldn't have come in like that unless it was the real deal. The worst kind. Across town, the devastating news found Lily Parker just moments later. She was at the kitchen table finishing homework when her mother took a call, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. "Lily, honey, it's Ranger!" Lily's pencil clattered to the floor. Her heart plummeted. "What about him, Mom? What happened to him?" Her mother's voice trembled as she spoke. "He collapsed. They're taking him to the hospital." The little girl didn't need to hear another word. She shot toward the door, tears already clouding her sight. To her, Ranger was more than a dog. He was her guardian, the hero who had saved her life months before, the protector who slept by her bed through every nightmare, the gentle soul who would nudge away her tears with his nose. To her, Ranger was family. Her father grabbed the keys, his voice tight. "Get in. We'll be there in 5 minutes." That short drive felt like an eternity. Lily pressed her face to the cold glass, her quiet sobs a desperate prayer. "Please be okay. Please be okay." Back at the station, officers gathered their gear for the hospital. They refused to let Ranger fight this battle all alone, but a chilling fear hung heavy in the air. No one knew if he could survive long enough for them to even get there. The doors of Oak Ridge Veterinary Hospital slid open quietly, but the atmosphere inside was anything but calm. Officers filled the waiting room, men and women who faced down criminals, now standing utterly frozen in their grief. Their eyes were red, hands clenched, their breathing shallow. Lily stepped inside between her two parents, her small fingers digging into her father's coat, scanning the room. She had never seen so many officers in one place, and she had never seen them this silent. It felt like the very air in the room was holding its own breath. Officer Miller saw her first, his face instantly softening. He knelt down, opening his arms, and Lily ran right to him. He held her close, his voice cracking. "He's fighting, kiddo. Ranger's a very strong boy," but the tremor in his voice told her more than his words ever could. Her mother's hand found Lily's shoulder. "Where is he?" Officer Jacobs pointed down a hallway. "Room 3. They're stabilizing him. The vet says he's in critical condition." Critical. The single word echoed in Lily's mind, a nightmare from which she simply could not wake. Walking down the hall, each step felt heavier than the last. The lights hummed softly disinfectant, filling the air. Lily wiped away her tears, trying to be brave, just like Ranger had always taught her that she could be. But nothing could prepare her for what she saw inside the doorway. Ranger was lying on a cold metal table, his chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. His beautiful, shining fur now looked so dull and lifeless. His eyes, half open, just stared at nothing. A monitor beeped slowly beside him. A tube extended from his mouth. 2 vets worked urgently around him. "Ranger," Lily whispered. His ear twitched just the slightest bit, but it was enough to make Lily collapse into her mother's arms, sobbing. Dr. Collins, the head vet, looked up. His face held a deep sympathy, one that comes from years of giving heartbreaking news. He stepped toward Lily, kneeling down to look her right in the eyes. "He's very sick," he said gently. "But he definitely knows you're here. That's helping him more than anything we can do." Lily sniffed, stepping closer to rest her hands on the table. "I'm right here, Ranger. I'm right here," she whispered. The shepherd let out the faintest, most broken whine, the first real sound he'd made since collapsing. Officers in the doorway had to wipe their eyes. It was clear to everyone. Ranger was holding on just for her. The sight of him so helpless on that metal table sent Lily's mind spiraling back to the day that everything had changed. The day Ranger became so much more than just a police dog. The day he became her hero. It was a warm autumn afternoon. Lily, only 8, but so full of curiosity, had wandered a little too far from the park while chasing a bright yellow butterfly. Sunlight flickered through the trees, shadows clawed across the path like grasping fingers. She was oblivious to how the world had fallen silent, how the laughter of families had dissolved into the distance. And she never saw the eyes that were fixed upon her. He emerged from the shadow of an ancient oak, his voice a disarming silk. "Hey there, little one. Are you lost?" Lily went completely still. There was something unnatural in his smile, something too wide, too rigid. I have to go back," she stammered, desperately trying to move past him, but his hand shot out, clamping onto her wrist. The forest devoured her tiny scream as he pulled her deeper into the trees, his grip so tight it would surely leave a bruise. "Be quiet," he hissed. "No one can hear you." But he was wrong. Something could. For the last hour, Officer Miller and his K-9 partner Ranger had been tracking a common purse snatcher. Ranger's powerful nose and unwavering focus leading the charge came to an abrupt, absolute halt. His ears pivoted, every muscle in his body tensed. Then he exploded into a dead sprint. "Ranger, wait!" Miller yelled, racing to keep up. But Ranger was deaf to his commands. He was locked onto something else, something far more urgent, something horribly wrong. He powered through thick underbrush, bursting through a curtain of grass until he slid to a stop in a dark clearing. And that's when he saw her. The man's hand was clamped brutally over Lily's mouth as he tried to force her towards a dilapidated shed. Lily's eyes were huge with terror, her stifled cries lost to the wind. Ranger never hesitated. A guttural roar tore from his chest, a sound so primal it froze the man in his tracks. Before he could react, Ranger launched himself, slamming him to the forest floor. The man shrieked, scrambling away as Ranger stood guard over the little girl, his teeth bared, his eyes burning with a righteous fury. Seconds later, Officer Miller crashed into the clearing. "Hands where I can see them," he commanded. The trembling man gave up instantly. Ranger remained a steadfast shield in front of Lily until Miller had the man in cuffs and was hauling him away. Only then did Ranger turn. He walked toward Lily softly, his tail slowly lowering, his head tilted in gentle inquiry. Lily, still shaking, moved toward him and threw her small arms around his powerful neck. She cried into his thick fur, and Ranger leaned into her touch, gently licking the tears from her face. From that day forward, Lily never went anywhere without whispering, "My hero, my Ranger," and now standing over his weakening form. She felt that same forest terror return, only this time it was infinitely worse. This time she was terrified of losing him. Dr. Collins peeled off his gloves with a heavy slowness, the kind of deliberate movement that comes just before words that nobody ever wants to hear. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor felt like a grim countdown, each pulse tightening the vice around Lily's heart. His fellow officers filled the doorway, a silent, heartbroken assembly, none daring to cross the threshold. Even the toughest of them, men who faced down armed suspects without flinching, now looked utterly broken. Some fixed their gaze on the floor, while others pressed a fist to their mouth. No one spoke. Finally, Dr. Collins broke the silence with a heavy sigh. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "His condition is extremely grave." Lily's breath hitched in her throat. Her mother's hand tightened on her shoulder as the veterinarian went on. His voice was gentle, but each word was weighted with sorrow. "He's in rapid organ failure. His temperature is unstable. His heart rate keeps dropping. We're doing everything we possibly can, but he's just not responding." Officer Miller's voice finally broke. What did this to him?" "He was perfectly fine yesterday. We're not certain yet," Dr. Collins said, shaking his head. "It could be a kind of internal infection, a delayed reaction to some trauma, or something rare we've yet to identify. But whatever this is," he trailed off, picking his words with immense care. "It's advanced," Clear's throat. "Extremely advanced." Lily took a step closer. Is he dying?" Her voice was so quiet the question almost vanished, but it landed in the heart of everyone there, and it struck them with a force greater than any bullet. Dr. Collins knelt down before her, his own eyes shining with unshed tears. He'd known Ranger for years. "Honey," he whispered gently. "He's fighting with more heart than any dog I have ever seen. But right now he needs your strength more than anything." Lily wiped at her tears, but they wouldn't stop. She turned back toward Ranger, whose faint, shallow breaths fogged the oxygen mask. She reached out her hand gently, covering his paw. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Ranger's eyelids fluttered. His ears twitched at her voice. A soft, weak whine escaped his lips, faint, but it was undeniably him. The officers by the door turned their backs, wiping their eyes. Dr. Collins cleared his throat. "We are going to give him all the time we possibly can," he promised. "But if that heart rate falls again, we'll need to discuss options." It felt like the whole world was tilting. Lily's legs buckled as her mother caught her. She buried her face into her hands, her body shaking uncontrollably. The devastating truth descended on the room like a heavy shroud. Ranger might not survive the next hour. For what felt like an eternity, Lily just stood there watching Ranger through a blur of tears. Everything around her seemed to go silent. The officer's footsteps, the quiet hum of machines, her mother's whispered assurances. It all faded away until the only sound left was the ragged rhythm of Ranger's breathing. She took one trembling step forward, and then another. The veterinarians shared a look, but they didn't dare stop her. They all knew this moment was beyond medicine. This was emotional, almost spiritual. Ranger needed her. Lily laid her small hands on the cool edge of the metal table. Her fingertips grazed against Ranger's fur. It was still warm, but unnervingly still. His eyes cracked open a mere slit, as if the effort consumed every last bit of his strength. But then he saw her, truly saw her, and the hardness in his gaze seemed to melt away. "Hey, boy," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "It's me. I am here." Ranger let out a soft, broken exhale. It wasn't a bark, and it wasn't a whine. It was the sound of a true warrior recognizing the person he cherished most in this world. From her pocket, Lily pulled out a small, faded pink hair ribbon. It was the one Ranger always tried to steal during their games. She touched it to his paw. "Remember this one?" she asked, her smile tiny and trembling. "You always used to steal this from me." His ear twitched faintly. She swallowed hard. "I know you're so tired," she whispered. "And I know that it hurts." She reached up, brushing away a tear near Ranger's eye. "And if you need to go now, I just want you to know you were the greatest friend I could ever have." A sob escaped her and she couldn't hold it back. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering through her tears, "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for always protecting me. Thank you for being my hero." Behind them, Officer Miller pressed a hand to his mouth and had to look away. A second officer swiped at his eyes. Even Dr. Collins had to stop faking an adjustment on a machine to hide the tears welling in his own. "Could you?" Lily's voice cracked. She drew a shaky breath. "Can you hug me? Just one last time, please." She reached for his paw, cupping it gently in both her hands. It felt like dead weight, so heavy and limp, almost without life. But as she guided it toward her shoulder, Ranger summoned his will. His muscles shuddered, his claws scratching faintly against the cold table. His whole leg trembled with the immense strain. It wasn't enough. He couldn't quite reach her, but it was everything he had, a testament to his fight for her. Lily leaned in, letting his paw settle against her arm. "It's okay," she whispered, as tears streamed down her face. "You're not alone in this. I'll help you." Ranger's eyes fluttered shut, his breaths coming in ragged gasps, as if he was mustering every last shard of his spirit from deep within his failing body. The battle wasn't lost yet. For an eternity of seconds, the room fell silent, so still that the quiet ticking of a wall clock echoed. Each tick marked the draining of Ranger's life, as Lily stood vigil, clutching his paw to her arm, her silent tears falling onto his fur. She wasn't sobbing. Her sorrow was a chasm too deep for sound. Instead, she just trembled, whispering his name over and over like a prayer. "Ranger, please." Dr. Collins glanced at the monitor. The line on the screen faltered again. The officers stirred, restless with worry. A voice whispered, "Come on, boy." Almost too quiet to hear. Then Ranger's ear twitched. With agonizing effort, he opened his eyes. They were clouded and lost, yet they scanned the room with a singular purpose until they found her. Lily. His girl. His reason for every single mission, every battle, every last breath. A low rumble vibrated deep within his chest. It was no growl, no sound of pain. It was the sound of pure recognition of love. "Ranger," Lily breathed, leaning in closer. What happened in that next instant caused every grown man in that room to gasp. Ranger was trying again, his paw lifting just a fraction, but the intention behind it was a force of nature. His muscles quaked like wires pulled taut to their breaking point. His entire frame convulsed from the monumental effort. Still he pushed. He pushed because she had asked, because she needed him to. Because she was the same little girl whose tears he had once licked away in the dark woods. The girl he had defended from her captors without an ounce of fear. The one he had made a silent vow to protect until his very last heartbeat. Lily met his effort, helping him raise his paw, and with one final, impossible surge of strength, Ranger wrapped his leg around her small shoulders. He was hugging her. A soft, broken whimper escaped Lily's lips as she melted into him, clinging to his neck with both her arms. "It's okay. It's okay," she choked out, her voice shattering with each word. "I've got you. You're safe now. I'm right here." Ranger's breathing caught. His nose gently brushed against her cheek. A single tear escaped the corner of his eye, a solitary drop that glistened in the stark light. Officer Miller pressed a hand to his own chest as his own tears fell freely. "Oh God," he choked out. "He's saying goodbye." Dr. Collins blinked hard behind his glasses, wiping them to hide the emotion welling in his eyes. A younger officer had to turn and leave the room, unable to bear witness. But no matter how agonizing it was, no one could look away for long. This was so much more than a dog hugging a little girl. This was a final, sacred promise, a warrior giving every last ounce of his being for the one soul he loved most. The embrace lasted mere seconds, but it stretched into an eternity both beautiful and unbearable. And then Ranger's paw finally slipped from her shoulder, falling silent upon the table. A choked gasp escaped Lily. "Ranger!" she pleaded, her voice a desperate whisper. "Ranger, you have to stay with me! Please, just stay!" The monitor's jagged beeps echoed his fading pulse. His breaths were shallow, painfully slow. A silent, heartbreaking truth settled over the room. That embrace? It might have been their very last. A profound chill filled the air, colder than the sterile steel, colder than the unforgiving lights above. Lily remained anchored at Ranger's side, her hand resting on his paw, as if her touch alone could be the tether that kept his soul from drifting away. Officers stood frozen in the doorway, a line of silent sentinels unable to look away, yet powerless to intervene. Dr. Collins's gaze fell back to the monitor. Ranger's heart rate plunged, the beeps stretching into an agonizing, silent void between them, each one weaker, more fragile. The vet drew a long, fortifying breath, then turned to the small metal tray at his side. On it lay a single syringe, a clear liquid, a slender needle, a devastating finality. Lily saw it. They all saw it. He hesitated before reaching for it, his hand trembling slightly, a tremor that defied his many years of practice. "This is the part I never get used to." He murmured the words, barely a breath yet. In the crushing silence, they landed with the force of a shout. Lily's mother wrapped her in a comforting embrace, but Lily pulled away, stepping forward, shaking her head in fierce denial. "No, wait, please. Isn't there anything else you can do?" Dr. Collins knelt beside her, his own eyes mirroring her deep heartbreak. "Sweetheart, if he keeps suffering, he'll be in so much pain. This is a way for him to finally rest peacefully." Lily's tears fell in a torrent. "But he hugged me. He tried. Doesn't that mean he wants to stay?" The vet's voice cracked. "He loves you more than anything. But his body is giving out." Behind them, Officer Miller's jaw was set like stone as a single tear traced a path down his cheek. "If there was any other way," he muttered with raw conviction, "we'd take it in a heartbeat." Dr. Collins rose, the syringe in his hand, feeling impossibly heavy. He approached the table slowly, each step a deliberate, mournful march. It was as if each footstep carried the weight of their world. Lily pressed her forehead against Ranger's, whispering through her sobs, "I love you. Thank you for everything. You can rest now if you need to. I'll be okay. I promise." The monitor offered one weak beep in reply. Ranger's chest rose and fell. Rose and fell. The vet positioned the needle, pausing for one final heart-stopping moment. His hand was unsteady. "Goodbye, boy," he whispered. The entire room held its breath as one officer's parents, nurses. Even the very air seemed to freeze in time. Then, just as the needle began its descent, something shifted. A flicker, a twitch. A change so subtle yet so profound it froze the veterinarian's hand in mid-air. For the space of a single heartbeat, no one understood what they had witnessed. Dr. Collins was motionless, the syringe suspended just inches from Ranger's fur, his eyes narrowed. His breath caught in his throat. The officers leaned forward. Lily lifted her head, her own tears arrested on her cheeks. What was that?" she breathed. Ranger's leg twitched again. But this was not the faint final spasm of a body giving up. It was sharper, intentional. It was a response. Dr. Collins took a half step back, his expression one of pure disbelief. "Hold on," he commanded. "Everyone, don't move." The room went rigid. He leaned in, placing a hand gently over Ranger's ribcage. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Ranger's breathing, once so shallow and irregular, suddenly altered its rhythm. Not stronger, but different, a jagged, uneven pattern that defied the slow, steady decline they had all been bracing for. "What is it?" Officer Miller asked, his voice cracking. Dr. Collins was silent, his hands carefully adjusting the oxygen mask. He checked Ranger's gums, then his pupils. Something felt wrong. This decline was too fast, too catastrophic. It was as if a switch had been flipped. Then Ranger made a sound, a low, strained groan, not of pain, but of pressure. It sounded as if something deep inside was fighting to get out. He shifted his body, tensing just for a moment, then relaxed. Lily gasped. Ranger, can you hear me?" His ear twitched, a more definite movement this time. The vet's eyes widened. He spun toward the monitor, his hands flying to the sensors. "This isn't typical organ failure," he breathed. He muttered almost to himself. "This pattern, these spikes, this isn't how it ends." Officer Jacob stepped closer. "Doc, are you saying—" "I'm saying something is disrupting his system," Dr. Collins said sharply. "Something we've missed." He placed the syringe back onto the tray, his hands now shaking not from sorrow, but with a surge of adrenaline. "I need to run an emergency scan, now." Lily's mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The officers exchanged confused looks, a flicker of hope piercing through their tears. Lily held Ranger's paw. Is he still dying?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Collins met her gaze. His tone completely changed. Still serious, but no longer final. "I don't know," he said, his voice raw with honesty. "But I'm not giving up. Not yet." Two nurses then rushed in with a portable scanner. The room was suddenly charged with a new urgency. The crushing weight that had filled the air moments before was shattered by something electric, something alive with possibility. As they lifted Ranger gently for the scan, Lily whispered in his ear, "I knew you still had fight in you." The scanner whirred to life, its cold light bathing Ranger's limp form. Nurses worked with quiet efficiency, sliding the device into position. As Dr. Collins watched the monitor, his focus absolute, like a man with only seconds left on the clock. The officers crowded in, no longer frozen by grief, but charged with a tense, fragile hope. It was a feeling that trembled between hope and absolute fear. Lily stood on her toes, holding Ranger's paw. Please find it," she whispered. The vet swallowed hard. "Beginning scan." The machine began to hum, sending a slight vibration through the table. Lines and shapes formed on the screen, a ghostly blur at first, then sharpening into a grayscale map of Ranger's body. For a beat, Dr. Collins's face was a mask. Then his eyes widened. He leaned closer, manipulating the angle, scanning the image again and again. His breathing became heavy, audible. The color left his face not from fear, but from pure, staggering disbelief. "What is it?" Officer Miller pressed his voice tight. Dr. Collins didn't answer right away. His hands raced over the controls, changing views, zooming in on one spot, analyzing. His heart was a frantic drum in his chest, loud against the machine's low hum. He exhaled a sharp breath. "Oh my God!" Lily's fingers tightened on Ranger's paw. What is it? Is he okay?" she pleaded. Dr. Collins looked at her, and for the first time since Ranger fell, the emptiness in his eyes was replaced by something else. Hope. "Everyone look at this!" He pointed a shaking finger at the screen. The officers surged forward. Lily's parents drew closer. The room held its breath, even the nurses leaning closer. On the screen, a shadow bloomed, an ominous, dark mass pressed tight against Ranger's diaphragm. It wasn't a tumor, nor was it fluid buildup. It was something else entirely. That is not organ failure," Dr. Collins finally uttered, his own voice shaking with disbelief. "It's an obstruction." Officer Jacobs blinked, processing the word. An obstruction, you mean like something stuck in him? Precisely. The vet confirmed, his focus absolute. A foreign object, one that's been lodged there for some time, perhaps from a past mission or even a struggle, maybe from a piece of debris? He took a sharp breath, tracing the object's haunting outline. It's compressing vital nerves and restricting his breathing. That's the reason his vitals were crashing. A gasp escaped Lily's mother. So, he's not dying. Dr. Collins held up a steadying hand. Let's be perfectly clear, his condition is critical, extremely so. But asterisk this asterisk. He stared back at the screen, a look of sheer wonder on his face. This we can treat. If we can remove that obstruction and do it now, he has a fighting chance. A wave of stunned whispers swept through the room. Officer Miller stumbled backward, burying his face in his hands as tears of pure relief streamed between his fingers. This time, they were tears of hope. Lily pressed her hands to her lips, her voice a fragile tremor. You can fix him. You can actually fix him, Doctor. Collins knelt, meeting her gaze at eye level. I can try, he promised softly. I swear to you, Lily, I am going to give him absolutely everything I have. A nurse moved forward. Prep the surgical suite. Immediately, Dr. Collins commanded, his voice ringing with newfound purpose. The officers stood taller, the suffocating despair that had crushed them moments before, vanishing like fog in the morning sun. As Ranger was gently lifted onto the gurney for the emergency surgery, Lily leaned in close to his ear. You held on just long enough for them to find it, she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. You are so brave. Just keep fighting for me, okay? Ranger's ear twitched more strongly this time. It was the only answer she needed. The operating room lights blazed to life, casting a cold, sterile glow over stainless steel and silent humming machines. The nurses moved with a swift, careful urgency, preparing instruments with practiced precision. The doors swung open, and Dr. Collins entered, his face a mask of focus reserved for moments where life hangs by a thread. Because that is precisely what this was. Ranger lay still upon the operating table, a silent warrior under the harsh lights, his chest rising and falling in shallow, measured breaths. Lily stood pressed against the viewing window, her parents and half the police force a silent vigil behind her, their collective breaths held in a mixture of hope and terror. Her hands were flat against the cool glass, her breath fogging a small circle on its surface. Inside, Dr. Collins took his position, adjusting the brilliant magnifying lights. Heart rate is unstable, but holding, a nurse announced. Good, he replied, his voice calm and low. We're going in. The first incision was a fine, deliberate line. A profound silence descended upon the room, pierced only by the steady beep of the heart monitor and the quiet hum of life support. Doctor? Collins worked through layers of tissue with the gentle precision of a man defusing a bomb, and then he froze. There it is, he breathed. The nurses leaned in closer. Outside, Officer Miller pressed his face against the glass. There, embedded deep near Ranger's diaphragm, was a cruel, jagged piece of metal, no bigger than a bottle cap tarnished by time and trauma. It looked like a shard of shrapnel, the kind torn from a broken fence, loose debris, or perhaps a criminal's tool. Whatever its origin, it had been a silent poison inside him for weeks, perhaps even months. But how and why reveal itself now? Dr. Collins gently probed the embedded fragment. The instant he applied pressure to the surrounding tissue, Ranger's life signs flickered violently, then steadied. Here's what's been killing him, Dr. Collins declared. With every breath, every single motion, this fragment was tearing him apart from the inside, unleashing a storm of inflammation and internal swelling, crushing his nerves. Everything. The nurse gasped in disbelief. How could he possibly have been on his feet? Because he's Ranger. Officer Jacobs breathed against the glass. He doesn't know how to stop. Dr. Collins nodded grimly. He'd taken this wound on the job and just kept going, pushing through the agony until his body finally gave out. A knot tightened in Lily's father's throat. His collapse wasn't a failure of spirit, the vet explained. It was his body finally succumbing to the trauma inside. But the good news is we can get this out. A collective breath of relief seemed to sweep through the room. With painstaking care, Doctor Collins began the delicate work of extracting the metal shard. The instant it shifted, Ranger's vitals went haywire. The nursing team closed in, poised to act. "Stay with me, boy! Hold on!" the vet pleaded under his breath. Then with one decisive pull, the shard was free. The monitor screamed a high-pitched alarm, then fell silent, finding a steady rhythm. The room erupted in hushed sobs of relief. Beyond the glass, his fellow officers pulled each other into tight embraces. Lily's legs gave way, and she sank to the floor, weeping tears that were no longer of fear, but of fragile hope. Dr. Collins held up the blood-slicked shard, his own hand shaking. "This is what almost stole him from us," he said, his gaze shifting to the still form on the table. His voice softened with reverence. "But this warrior, he fought back. He fought with more heart than any animal I've ever treated. The surgery wasn't finished, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ranger had a fighting chance. The shard was gone, but the war for his life had only just begun. Ranger's still form lay under the harsh glare of the surgical lamps, a network of tubes and wires crisscrossing his fur like delicate lifelines. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor suddenly became a chaotic, desperate symphony of alarm, each erratic spike and terrifying plunge sending a wave of ice through the room. Dr. Collins's eyes were locked on the screen. "His pressure is falling again," a nurse announced, her voice strained with tension. "Start a second saline line now," Dr. Collins commanded, his tone a calm storm of urgency. "We have to get his circulation back before we lose his organs." On the other side of the glass wall, Lily stood frozen, her hands pressed flat against her chest, feeling her own heart hammer a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Her father's arm around her was a distant comfort. She didn't flinch. Her world had narrowed to that room. She wouldn't look away. Ranger was counting on her. She had to be strong for him now. Suddenly, a voice from inside shattered the quiet. "He's crashing. He's going into shock, Doctor." Collins became a blur of focused action. "Push warm fluids, maximize the oxygen." His voice dropped to a plea. "Come on, Ranger. You stay with us." The next few seconds stretched into an eternity of controlled chaos. The sharp snap of gloves, the hum of machines, the swift, precise ballet of the nurses. It was as if the entire world held its breath, balanced on the razor's edge of a single heartbeat, waiting for fate to choose a side. Ranger's life signs plummeted. Officer Miller stumbled back from the glass as if struck. No, not now. Come on, boy. Don't you dare give up." Lily pressed her hands flat against the cold glass, silent tears streaming down her face. "Fight, Ranger. Please. You have to fight." Her words were a whisper against the barrier, but it felt as if her love reached him. Because then, impossibly, Ranger's ear twitched, a minuscule movement almost imagined, but it was enough. Dr. Collins's head shot up. "There," he breathed. "He's responding. Increase the heat. Keep the circulation moving. He's fighting back." The minutes that followed crawled by like agonizing hours. The monitor's chaotic rhythm stuttered, and then for one beautiful moment found its beat, and then plunged again. Each violent swing of the line made Lily's breath hitch, her tiny body shaking in raw fear as a nurse murmured, "His heart is just too weak." "No!" Dr. Collins shot back, his voice thick with defiance. "Not this dog. Not on my watch. Charge the stabilizer. We are bringing him back." The room was suddenly bathed in a glow as the machine hummed to life, a beacon of hope in the sterile space. They carefully placed the stabilizing pads over Ranger's chest. Not a shock, but a gentle current to coax his heart back into rhythm. "Ready," a nurse confirmed. Now, Dr. Collins commanded. A silent surge of energy coursed through Ranger's body. The monitor went flat. A collective breath was held in the silence. Then, a single beep. Another. A steady, strengthening rhythm. A tidal wave of relief washed over the room. Through the glass, the hardened officers gasped in unison. Lily finally collapsed into her mother's embrace, her body shaking with sobs of pure, unbridled hope. He wasn't out of the woods, but Ranger was fighting back. And this battle was not over. The operating room had become a battlefield. Harsh lights blazed down, machines whirred and beeped, the snap of latex gloves punctuating the air. Commands were exchanged with razor-sharp urgency. And at the heart of the storm lay Ranger, his chest rising and falling in a shallow, fragile rhythm. Each breath was a whispered plea for life. "Vitals are climbing, but they're still unstable," a nurse announced, her voice tight with tension. Dr. Collins gave a sharp nod, never taking his eyes off his patient. Sweat beaded on his brow, but his hands were as steady as a surgeon's hands could be. "We need to clear this internal swelling. Prepare the anti-inflammatory drip." Another nurse was already moving. "On it, doctor." Beyond the sterile world of the glass window, the hallway was a sea of blue uniforms, filled with men and women who had faced down danger for years without flinching. But now every single one of them stood with trembling hands and tear-streaked faces, their jaws clenched tight. They had never felt so utterly powerless. And at the very front stood Lily, a small beacon of unwavering faith, her tiny palms pressed firmly against the cold glass. Her forehead rested just below her hands as she whispered a constant, desperate prayer, as if her words were the very threads keeping Ranger tethered to this world. "You can do this, Ranger. You're so brave. Please, please don't leave me. I need you." Her voice wavered, cracked, and broke, but it never ever fell silent. Inside the operating room, Dr. Collins delicately probed the wound, his focus absolute, as he assessed the devastating damage from the metal shard. "He's lost too much blood," he muttered, his voice low and grave. "Start another transfusion." "Yes, doctor," a nurse replied instantly. A second nurse cleared the wound. "Swelling is coming down, but his temperature is dropping." "Raise the external heat," Collins ordered. "Get blankets. Increase the IV flow." The team moved in a blur, a perfectly synchronized unit. This was more than just a medical procedure now. It was pure heart, raw determination. An unspoken oath taken by every person in that room the moment they saw Ranger fall. They were not going to lose him. Not this dog, not today. Then Ranger's body gave a weak twitch as if hearing their resolve. His paw shifted slightly. An ear flickered. His chest rose with a single shaky breath. "He's fighting," a nurse whispered, her voice filled with awe. "He's actually fighting back." Dr. Collins leaned in close. "That's it, boy. You stay with me." And just as hope bloomed, the monitor screamed again with an erratic alarm. The vitals spiked, plunged, then spiked again. A sharp gasp escaped Lily's lips. "Ranger Doctor, what's happening to him?" Her father tried to pull her back, but she resisted, straining forward. Her eyes were locked on the faint, precious movement of Ranger's chest. Inside, Dr. Collins's voice cut through the alarm. "Stabilize his heart rhythm. Push another dose now." A fresh jolt of panic shot through the room, but the doctor's steady command guided them, a conductor leading an orchestra through a storm. The life-saving medicine flowed once more. The machines droned on a cold counterpoint to the fierce battle waged within Ranger's chest. Each second felt like an eternity. Then, ever so slowly, the frantic peaks on the screen began to soften. The sharp, terrifying valleys leveled out. The frantic beeping found a rhythm, growing steady and then strong. A shared, silent exhale swept through the room. "He's stabilizing." A nurse breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. Dr. Collins's shoulders finally slumped, the weight of the world seemingly lifting from them. "Good boy," he choked out, clearing his throat. Such a strong boy. Just outside the glass, Lily's small legs gave way beneath her. Officer Miller was there to catch her, his own silent tears tracing paths down his stoic face. Ranger's battle was far from over, but for the first time since he fell, death's shadow was receding. He wasn't just surviving, he was fighting, and he was winning. In the hallway, the silence was absolute, so profound, Lily could hear the frantic beat of her own heart, and each shaky breath she drew. A silent brotherhood of officers stood shoulder to shoulder, a stoic blue line holding vigil behind her. Not a word was spoken, not a man moved. They just waited suspended in a moment that stretched into an agonizing eternity. Then, from inside the room, the harsh surgical lights extinguished one by one. A silhouette shifted behind the frosted glass before the door finally swung open. Dr. Collins emerged, slowly peeling off his gloves. His face was an unreadable mask of exhaustion, a calm that sent a fresh wave of dread crashing over Lily. She gripped her mother's hand, her knuckles turning white. "Doctor," she breathed the words, barely a whisper. Is he—" For a heartbeat, Dr. Collins remained silent. He drew a long, slow breath, his gaze sweeping across the sea of uniformed officers, braced for the worst news of their careers. And then his expression broke into a smile. It wasn't large or triumphant, but something softer, something warmer, something real. It was a smile that breathed life back into the suffocating quiet. "He made it," he said, his voice low. And the hallway erupted. Officer Miller buried his face in his hands, his broad shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Jacobs released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Someone whispered, "Thank God!" as another officer threw a fist in the air in a silent, triumphant cheer. But amidst the tears of relief, Lily remained frozen. She could only stare at Dr. Collins, the words echoing in her mind, too wonderful to be true. He's alive," she whispered, her voice trembling. The veterinarian knelt to meet her gaze, his voice gentle but laced with reverence. "Yes, sweetheart. He's not entirely out of the woods, but he's here. He needs to rest and we have to watch him closely. But he pulled through. That dog fought harder than any animal I have ever had the honor to treat." Lily's lower lip trembled as she covered her mouth, a torrent of joyful tears finally breaking free. Her parents sank to the floor beside her, enveloping her in their arms as she sobbed not with grief but with overwhelming relief. "Can I see him?" she asked through her tears. Dr. Collins gave a soft nod. "In just a few minutes. We're letting him wake up slowly, but he's stable enough to have his best girl by his side." Officer Miller stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "Doc, thank you. From all of us. You saved a member of our family tonight." Dr. Collins simply shook his head. "No, Ranger saved himself. I just gave him the tools to win the fight." The officers nodded in solemn agreement, wiping tears from their eyes as a profound sense of pride filled the air. A nurse appeared. "Dr. Ranger's heart rhythm is holding steady. He's starting to stir as the sedative wears off." "Good," Dr. Collins affirmed. "Let's get Lily ready to go in." As Lily pushed herself to her feet, her legs still shaking, the line of officers parted before her, as if by instinct, creating a clear path, an honor guard born of respect, gratitude, and shared love. She fixed her eyes on the door to his room. Just moments before, it had represented the end of everything. Now it was a gateway back to her hero, and every single step she took felt like walking out of the deepest darkness and into the dawn. The recovery room was a quiet sanctuary of dim, warm light, a world away from the surgical storm. Monitors pulsed softly, their rhythm a steady, reassuring song. Ranger now rested on a soft bed, swaddled in blankets, his chest rising and falling with deep, even breaths. A clean bandage dressed his wound. His fur was clean, his body looking fragile but finally at peace. A nurse opened the door with a gentle push. "Lily, you can go in." Her small footsteps echoed like a fragile heartbeat, fighting to stay strong. The officer remained in the hallway, allowing the little girl to make this journey on her own. Her parents stood back quietly, wiping away their tears. The moment Lily saw Ranger, a sharp, hopeful gasp escaped her. There he was, her hero, her guardian, her best friend alive. She moved toward him slowly, terrified that he was a dream she might blink away. When she finally reached the side of the table, she rested her trembling hand upon his paw. "Ranger," she whispered. A flicker of his ear and her heart nearly burst. "Ranger, it's me. It's Lily. I'm right here." The German shepherd's eyes fluttered once, then twice. Then, with monumental effort, he fought his way through the fog of sleep and opened them. They were clouded and weak, yet they held an undeniable light. "Recognition!" Lily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as tears of pure relief streamed down her face. "Oh, you came back," she sobbed softly. "You really, truly came back." Ranger shifted his paw a mere inch, but it was enough to touch her fingers. She immediately cradled it in both of her hands, kissing it softly. "I love you so much, my brave boy. I am so proud of you." His tail gave a single soft thump against the blanket, but it was a gesture so powerful it broke the hearts of everyone watching from the hall. Lily leaned in, resting her forehead against his. "You don't have to be strong for me anymore," she whispered. "Your only job now is to heal. I'll sit with you. I'll be here all night, I promise." Ranger released a quiet breath, a profound sigh of relief. His eyes drifted closed again, not from exhaustion this time, but from the solace of her presence. Peace. Out in the hall, Officer Miller wiped his own eyes and whispered to the others, "Somebody get this on video. The world needs to see what true love really looks like." A nurse quietly raised her phone. Lily began to stroke Ranger's fur, humming a soft tune. It was the same lullaby she hummed for herself when she was afraid. Only now she sang it for him. Ranger's breathing deepened, becoming steady and strong. The battle was finally over. The reunion was whole. And in this moment, the image of a wounded police dog his paw held in the tiny hands of the girl he had nearly died to save was about to become one of the most powerful stories the world had ever witnessed. The following morning, the first rays of sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds, painting warm stripes of gold across the recovery room floor. Ranger was still resting, but his breathing was deep and sure, a world away from the shallow breaths of days past. His tail offered a faint wag now and then, always when Lily whispered his name, or gently stroked his head. Word of his survival had already spread like wildfire through the city. Dozens of officers, local families, and even strangers packed the waiting area, clutching handmade posters, heartfelt cards, and crayon drawings. Children had sketched pictures of Ranger wearing a superhero's cape. Adults had penned long letters thanking him for his incredible sacrifice. Someone had even left a bouquet of roses shaped into a perfect dog paw by the door. Inside the room, Lily sat on a chair, legs crossed, keeping a loving vigil as Ranger slept. Her eyes were still swollen from weeping, but these were tears that washed away the shadows of fear, leaving only hope in their wake. Her father entered the room holding a carefully folded paper. "Sweetheart," he murmured, his voice gentle. "This arrived from the police department. They wanted you to see it first." Lily unfolded the paper with care. It was a certificate formal, with an official stamp. The words were inscribed in elegant script, "Honorary Medal of Bravery awarded to Ranger K9 Hero." Her chin quivered as she absorbed their meaning. "He deserves this," she whispered, her fingertips gently stroking Ranger's fur. "He deserves the world." Just beyond the doorway, a group of officers stood in solemn assembly. Officer Miller stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with pride, a powerful blend of gratitude and love that resonated through the hall. "Ranger didn't just save one little girl," he began. "He saved a part of all of us. He showed us the face of true loyalty, the definition of courage, and the boundless capacity of a loving heart." A wave of heartfelt agreement rippled through the officers. From this day forward, Miller declared, Ranger will be honored as a hero throughout this department. His story will become part of our training, his bravery a legend to be remembered for generations. Back inside the room, Lily leaned close, pressing a soft, reverent kiss to Ranger's forehead. Hear that? She whispered, a soft smile on her lips. You're a legend. Ranger's eyes then fluttered open for a moment, just long enough for a soft, warm gaze that communicated a universe of feeling he could never speak aloud. It was a look of love of thanks, a silent vow to always be by her side. Lily rested her head on the bed next to him. You're not just a K9, she whispered. You're my hero, my angel, and my best friend. And in that tranquil, golden-lit moment, while the world outside celebrated his name, Ranger let out a soft sigh. It was a sound of pure peace, of profound relief, and an unspoken message that touched all who knew him. Love with all your heart, protect without fear, and never give up on those you hold dear. Ranger had fought death itself, and his legacy would go on to inspire millions.